Earth Day, while begun as an environmental teach-in, has become a holy day for some, particularly those such as Unitarian Universalists who understand ourselves as part of the interdependent web of all creation. The call to care for creation is a call to us not only as activists or concerned citizens, but as people of faith. It's a call to reflect on how the God of our lives is experienced in our relationship with the earth. Before our prayer this morning, the choir sang a traditional Hawaiian song, E Malama. The words translate to, "We shall take care of this sacred land and do what is right." The concept of malama, to care for, and malama aina, which means to care for the land, goes back to the ancient Polynesians who found a home on the islands of Hawaii. They learned that if they cared for the land, it would care for them in return, both in body and in spirit. Perhaps this is why so many continue to flock to the islands of Hawaii. There's something about the land that is healing and nourishing. But malama aina isn't only about what we get from the land. It's a value and a way of being at the core of indigenous Hawaiian culture, which acknowledges that we must care for and nurture the land so that it will give back all that we need to sustain life for ourselves and for future generations. Jennifer Kwong, a UU minister who has served churches in Hawaii, says, "If we malama the aina will malama us." The relationship between humans and the earth is a reciprocal one. Malama aina has become a slogan for a number of initiatives, from environmentally friendly tourism to Hawaiian sovereignty politics, sustainable business practices to biosecurity inspections at borders. I read a story this week about a ship crew who traveled from Hawaii to the Galapagos Islands. And when they arrived, they learned a lesson about their own indigenous value of malama aina. Before they could enter the waters of the Galapagos, they underwent a thorough inspection by a biosecurity officer to prevent them from carrying any undesirable and potentially dangerous life into the fragile Galapagos ecosystem. They had to fumigate the entire boat to remove any foreign species. They also had to find creative uses for all the fresh food that they had brought with them for meals along the way. They ate a lot of onions in the final days of their voyage. All of this was an effort to care for the environment and to be mindful of the ways that we impact it that might never occur to us. Our story this morning, based on the book Milo and the Magical Stones, is an imaginary mouse world version of malama aina. Milo is part of a community of field mice that live on a small island, much like Hawaii. One day he finds this glowing rock that provides warmth and comfort and light that he needs in the cold of winter. And the elder mouse, perhaps the indigenous elder, warns the mice that if they take something from the island, they have to give something in return. Of course, the happy ending is the one in which the mice embrace this concept of malama aina and begin carving and painting and decorating stones, giving them back in gratitude to the island, in the exact spot where they took those magical glowing stones. The other ending, though, tells of very greedy mice who find out about Milo's magical stone, and all of them want one for themselves. And this, of course, ends in the devastation of their own habitat. When I was a child, I used to gather rocks and shells from beaches and loading up my pockets and bringing them home, only to have them sit in shoe boxes and glass jars collecting dust. Did anybody else do this? Or your children? Yes. This impulse to take shells from beaches and rocks from mountains and flowers from natural areas is deeply ingrained in us. We appreciate the beauty of nature and want to bring more of that beauty into our lives and to keep it and to hold it. We might even trace the roots of this impulse to the creation stories that have shaped Western culture and religion. The ancient Babylonian creation story, Enuma Elish, tells of the god Tiamat, known as Mother Nature, who is defeated by Marduk, the king of the gods. Tiamat is a complex god, but she is too powerful in the eyes of Marduk, and so she is subdued, supposedly in order for life to flourish on earth. The theme of this story is domination, rather than a relationship of mutuality or care. And of course, we all know the Genesis creation story, in which the seas and the sky and all the creatures come into being and are created by God. But what some do not know is that this story actually has two very different versions, with different roles for humans within each. The commonly known and perhaps most told version is Genesis 1, which gives Adam and Eve the power to subdue the earth and have dominion over all living things, which are separated by kind and set up in hierarchical relationships. Order is created and authority granted so that humans can preserve creation. The lesser-known version in Genesis chapter 2, which is actually the older story, tells of the first humans as created to serve the earth. The relationships between creatures in this story are characterized by mutuality. Humans are given free will, but with certain boundaries. So Genesis chapters 1 and 2 are two very different accounts of creation. What has happened, though, is that many have conflated the stories. The free will and authority granted to humans are mingled, but the constraints and the responsibility are lost, leading to what appears as permission to exploit nature, rather than to a call to serve or preserve it. Civilization today takes and takes and takes from creation, with very little care given to creation in return. We often take much more than we give, like Milo and his mouse friends. We know where it got them at the end of the story, and we also know where it's gotten us in our world today. I don't need to repeat the facts of what's happening to our environment or what we're doing to creation, but it never hurts to be reminded that what we are doing to creation, we are doing to ourselves, because we are part of creation. As our reading this morning from Barbara Peskin says, "Look, this is our world for another day. Reach out to it. It is your own life." Now, I don't know about you, but the facts and figures about our environment can feel pretty heavy at times. And when we hear one depressing fact after another, it's easy to get stuck in despair and not move forward to do something about it. So when you're stuck in a seemingly hopeless situation, how do you find hope? How can we move from a place of hopelessness to action when faced with the enormity of our environmental problems? Well, I love our second reading this morning that Paul shared. It makes me chuckle because it is an honest reflection and meditation on our motivations for doing good. The author picks up litter along the road because it makes him look good to do so, and his good deed sets an example for others. But he also does it because he's angry at people for throwing their trash out of the car window and is trying to come to a place of forgiveness within himself. He does it because while there are larger and more destructive oppressions, the trash is present and real right in front of him. We're more likely to feel that we're making a difference when the impact is visible. It's harder when the issue is so big and we don't see how what we're doing impacts it. We know that life on Earth is resilient, but that doesn't mean that we should wait around hoping or wishing that things will get better on their own. Miguel de la Torre, a professor of ethics and Latinx studies at Iliff School of Theology, questions whether the phrase, "the arc of the universe bends toward justice," is really true, or whether it's helpful. This is a phrase I know we love to repeat from Theodore Parker and then Martin Luther King, that the arc of the universe bends toward justice. But he says that such impossible, fragile hope can be used to excuse inaction, particularly those of us in positions of privilege who may not be as directly impacted by environmental injustice. Instead, he suggests something pretty radical. He suggests embracing hopelessness in order to free us from despair and inaction. He says, if it's totally hopeless and nothing will change, you do what you do not because you know you're going to win, but because you have no other choice. I do what I do, he says, because it defines my very humanity. So if we take this approach, we embrace the hopeless reality that we cannot solve environmental degradation by ourselves. And this in itself frees us to act, to do what is right, not because it looks good or feels good, but because our survival depends on it. This is the truth of Malama Aina. Now, it seems paradoxical to embrace hopelessness in order to summon the hope to move forward, but it makes more sense to me the longer I reflect on it. If my hope and my commitment to act are based on the likelihood of what I want to happen actually occurring, then chances are I won't act. If my hope is to save the planet or eradicate racism and sexism, and those aren't likely to be solved in my lifetime, then it's easier for me to just throw up my hands and say, I have no meaningful way of making a difference. But there's another kind of hope, which environmental activist and Buddhist scholar Joanna Macy calls active hope. Active hope is a practice, like any other spiritual practice. It is something we do rather than something we have. And the more we do it, the more it kind of works on us. Active hope begins with taking in the hopelessness of whatever situation we find ourselves in. Macy describes three kind of steps to active hope. The first is to take in a clear view of reality, to ask ourselves, what is the nature and extent of this problem? The second is to identify the direction that we hope for things to move in. And the third is to take steps, even little ones, to move ourselves or the situation along that path. Macy reminds us that active hope does not require us to be optimistic, or even to know what all the steps are along that path. We can produce or practice active hope even when we feel hopeless. Our intention is what guides us in the direction that we seek to move. So making a commitment to care for creation and work for environmental change when the odds seem against us takes great courage. Courage not to ignore or deny the hopelessness and pain for our world that resides in our hearts. If we honor and embrace these, we have a chance of moving toward action. Joanna Macy identifies this as one of the steps in what she calls the work that reconnects. The reason we feel pain for the world is because all of creation is interrelated. It is our own life, as the reading reminds us. So when we acknowledge the hopelessness and pain, it also reconnects us with the power that is within us, and the power that is within our relationships with each other and with the universe. Earth Day is a time to remind ourselves of our place in the universe and to reconnect with that as a source of strength. It's an opportunity to experience grace. When we give grace to the earth is graceful with us. When we help the earth live and flourish, it feeds us and gives us a home in which to live and flourish. This is the grace of Malama Aina. So whatever you do or have done this weekend, whether it was marching for science yesterday or learning about sustainable living here at church this morning, reflecting on your relationship with the earth and what you can do, or engaging in actions such as recycling or a park cleanup, may all of these be an expression of active hope. Do not let the pain of the world block your ability to do good. And may the words our choir sang, "We shall take care of this sacred land and do what is right," continue to resound in our hearts. May it be so. Amen.